So the Eastside Culture Crawl is an annual 4-day visual arts festival in November that involves artists on Vancouver's East Side opening their studios to the public. The event is focused on the area bounded by Main Street, First Avenue, Victoria Drive, and the Waterfront, and involves painters, jewelers, sculptors, furniture makers, weavers, potters, printmakers, photographers, glassblowers, and so much more, because not everything actually is easy to categorize when it comes to art. The Eastside Culture Crawl officially began in 1997 with 45 visual artists in 3 Strathcona area studio buildings and was attended by a few hundred people. Since that time, the event has grown to include over 400 artists. Actually, I checked the website earlier, and it's currently, the count is at 405, and I think it's still growing. These are craftspeople and designers attracting an audience of more than 20,000. So tonight we'll hear from a very small selection of those 400 plus artists. And first up, we have Jon Shaw. So Jon Shaw's artistic practice examines city life, structure, and change. He is interested in the structures, signage, and decay that populate Vancouver's urban landscape, analyzing the environments that contain evidence of an urban population and its slow metamorphosis within a particular place is what drives the creation of his works. Jon's work begins as a loose abstract painted surface upon which he can assemble detailed ink drawings. He takes influence from various creative techniques utilized in advertising such as digital photo filtering, image manipulation, heavily layered constructs, and dated printing processes. This is Jon's 3rd year participating in the Eastside Culture Crawl.
Start my timer. I hope this sounds okay. Volume. All right, great. Thank you, friends, for. I kind of like to hold it. This is fun. So, thank you, friends, for coming out. I'm very excited to explain 5 minutes of my work to you. So, Rachel did a pretty good introduction about some of the techniques, but I think I'd like to focus on just what it is that I'm documenting and how I'm doing these works. So, in my opinion, I'm documenting a passage of time. So a lot of these spaces in Vancouver are not going to be here in 10 years, 20 years, for example. This city is growing and changing pretty rapidly, as I think we all know. And what I do is I go into these environments. This one is it's right beside the Railway Club, for example, downtown. And I go and I do a photo shoot, excuse me. And basically when I'm really capturing all the intricate details and the densities of broken fences and things that are decaying. But one of the things that I'm most fascinated with is the human presence by evidence. So you'll notice that all the alleyway pieces that I'm showing, they're devoid of humans, but the presence of them is there. So pieces of garbage in alleyways and graffiti written on walls and things that are just decaying and crumbling at the hands of humans. I find that really interesting. So in a way, it's a documentation of time that is evolving and just going by us slowly. Excuse me. I work as a graphic designer part-time, and one of the things that I'm most fascinated with is typography and package design, and I use these concepts to influence my work. So the color schemes that I choose for these environments is often picked up from a piece of garbage or wrapper that I find in the alleyway while I'm doing my photo shoot. And I also think there's an interesting connection between professional typography and street typography, also known as graffiti, but I like to call it street typography. And it's really interesting to see how people brand themselves and leave their evidence in these spaces, but that's what big corporate companies are doing as well. It's branding, and it's just using words and using pictures and colors to express a certain message to you. The only real difference is they're doing it intentionally and in your face, and someone else is doing it more anonymously, and I find that very interesting. Something else that I'm really interested in is drawing parallels between ecosystems and these environments. So a space like this, in my opinion, is an ecosystem. There's various components that work together, they feed off each other, and they inform other components in that area. So for example, if you see a cluster of wires overhead, they're connecting spaces, they're running information back and forth. Some people are here to leave things, some people are here to pick up things, and it all kind of works together as this interesting connection and this flow. And I think it's really funny how, excuse me, I have a bit of a cold. I just find it very interesting how these environments are so dense and so unique and so cool, and they're the back alley spaces. Like, to me, this is more interesting than what we see up front in the city. So this is why I'm capturing this. I've been asked if I'm going to be painting images of building fronts, and I've done landmark signs and images and components such as parking meters, but this is what I think the city has to offer in terms of the coolest visuals. I mean, I'm drawn to this more than, the waterfront skyscrapers, for example. And it's also really interesting, I'm just looking at this. This is looking down an alleyway towards Hastings, for example, and I'm looking at this building in the back, and that's the Empress Hotel. And I'm just wondering, how long things like this are going to be in the city as things continue to change and evolve. So that evolution definitely plays an intricate component in my work. And in terms of being a graphic designer as well, another thing that I'm really interested in, as Rachel mentioned in my introduction, is the use of dated printing processes. So I mentioned the packages that I find in the garbage that I'm really interested in. But the use of halftone dotted printing effects to create a lot of packages is something that I pick up on in my work. So I redo this effect here, for example, and you can see there's these little dot effects, and I just like to play with that, and I think that times up really perfectly, to be honest. So I think that's all I have to say about this for now. So.
Thank you, Jon.
How big are your pieces?
About 3 by 3 foot up to 4 foot, and starting to get into a 5 foot scale.
Thanks.
So next up, we have Robin Ripley. The way in which we connect with ordinary objects that surround us has been a recurring theme in the work of Robin Ripley. She is interested in materials with past lives, the cast-offs of nature and civilization, and how they evoke tactile information, knowledge, and memory. Using a variety of media, her work reconsiders the familiar while drawing attention to often overlooked but significant details. Since receiving a BFA from Emily Carr, Robin Ripley has exhibited regularly in a number of group and solo shows, and her work is found in both private and public collections. Robin has participated in the Eastside Culture Crawl intermittently since the beginning. Here I present Robin Ripley.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. And listening to Jon, I realized that one of the things about artists is, in some ways, they're really looking at societies and materials. And my work also, I responded to what Jon was saying, is my work's very much about sort of the objects that surround us. And I use a variety of different materials. And each series is discrete. Oh, we're doing them backwards. Okay. Okay. Doesn't matter. I was thinking that was number 5, but I'll start. This is a piece that's, I'll just flip my talk. This is a piece that's up right now in Sun Yat-sen Garden, and it's part of a community arts project with a artist land group, and it's in a Paulownia tree, and Paulownia, it's made with the pods from the tree and China, and the story of these trees, how they reached North America, was that the pods themselves were used as a styrofoam, like organic styrofoam, to ship China to North America. And as the pods were in the big packing crates, rumbling across the railways mostly. They distributed seeds across North America. And so that's sort of the story. So the piece is about how those trees reached here, but they're also a decorative tree and people do plant them. And in some parts in the United States, they're a pest. So they're a beautiful tree with fragrant blossoms, but it cuts both ways. It's not a local tree, so sometimes it's a problem. And this project is part of, it's a year-long project, and we're the first group that's in, and then there's another 3 artists. So if you want to keep an eye on Sun Yat-sen Garden, it's in collaboration with the Roundhouse. Check it out in the next year. And there's some people are doing musical things. There's a variety of different things, and you can see there's a website. And this is a series that I'm working on currently, and it's called Deco Debris. And I'm combining decorator samples with sort of found objects that I found around the city. And what really interested me was how the color swatches are such bizarre names, kind of like that they fit. So this one's called Amelia Blush, and it's a bone and a garter, and then the different color swatches, arborite. Those ones are arborite. And this work is paper. And like Rachel, I'm also fascinated by paperworks, and I worked in libraries in fact, that's how I supported my art habit for many, many years. And I really noticed in the change in technology over time how books, sort of not just the migration to ebooks, but also just how microfilm, different technologies affect what materials we have and how we respond to those materials. And the difference when you handle something compared to something online or microfiche, that you have a different relationship with objects. And my work always deals with our relationship with kind of common materials that we have around us. And I think sometimes I'm trying to draw attention to those details of how we do respond sometimes unconsciously. And I use recycled material because I think that it's often a good way to everybody's handled a book or handled a teacup or done those, they have a relationship with common objects, and sometimes that's less intimidating for people than sort of something that's an installation where they think, well, what is this about? Whereas when it's a starting point, so that's why I use materials. And this is an installation. It's felt and needles. And these are actually needles here, and there's different threads, and it's called catenary, and it's about 10 feet by 5 feet. And I'm also really interested in what sort of that blurry line between art and craft, and what kind of materials we use. What do we consider art? If it's a painting, then it's art. Why are textile things sometimes treated as craft, even though they can be sculptural? And I did a series of these thread drawings, both large scale, so I often work large scale, and also small. So there's also a series of little boxes, and they came out of my experience of someone gave me an old sewing box, and it had all this equipment in it, different needles that I had, that I'd never even seen before. So, and this is, I'll do this quickly. This is called Threnody, and it was, which is a lament, and it was a big installation of leaves that were mended. Each leaf was mended to fit sort of the character of the leaf, and then there was a scan component of images that were sort of the grid placed with a grid on the opposite wall. So this was a sort of 50 feet. There were about 400 leaves. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robin. So our next artist is Patsy Kay Kolesar. Patsy Kay Kolesar is a jewelry artist whose work is highly focused on color and pattern. An award-winning graduate from Vancouver Community College's Jewelry and Art and Design program, Patsy's one-of-a-kind pieces have been selected for exhibitions internationally, and her collections are sold at galleries across Canada. In 2012, Patsy was invited to do a 2-month artist residency in the Netherlands, where, to explore the idea of motion in life, she created work using only wire and simple hand tools. In 2013, Patsy was a founding member of the Vancouver Jewelry Artists Collaboration, a group focusing on the collaboration of jewelers and artists who work in varied mediums, with the intention of bringing more exposure to art jewelry in Canada. This is Patsy's 5th year participating in the Culture Crawl. Please welcome Patsy.
Thanks, Rachel. I got the email from Rachel asking me if I would be a part of tonight at about 9 in the morning one day. And I spent the whole entire day not responding to her because I was scared. I thought that maybe I could just totally ignore the email and pretend that it never existed. And if I ever met her one day, I'd just be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. It must have just disappeared. That's weird. But then, so I spent the whole entire day with these really irrational thoughts going through my mind. And then at about 4:30, I finally replied to her and I said, yes. Thank you so much for asking me. I would love to. I graduated from the Vancouver Community College Jewelry Art and Design program, and when I started the program, I wanted to make jewelry. When I graduated from the program, I wanted to make art, and I spend my life doing a balance of both of these things. I make jewelry that sells at galleries across Canada, and then I make one-of-a-kind jewelry art pieces for exhibitions, which never sell. In the past couple years of my life, I've had some really amazing opportunities, and I wanted to share one of them with you. So at the beginning of last year, at the beginning of January, I spent some time writing down what my intentions were for the year. And on my page about pleasure and adventure, I wrote 3 things: see live music, visit New York City, and say yes to things. About a month after that, I was filling out applications for things, and one of them was for a scholarship to attend a craft center in the States. And when I was filling out the application, I was full of self-doubt. I was thinking, I'm never gonna get it, and this is so much work, and why am I bothering even doing this? But I did it anyways, and I sent it off, and I didn't think about it again. Until a couple months later, when I got an email from the executive director of the craft center saying that he had some questions for me. And his questions were, Patsy, what the hell? You live in Canada? Would you seriously travel all the way to Farmington, Pennsylvania to attend a 3-day craft workshop? And of course, my initial reaction to his email, which is the same for my initial reaction to everything, was fear. I backed away from my computer and I was like, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? Am I nuts? Would I seriously travel all the way to Farmington, Pennsylvania to attend a 3-day craft workshop? And then I thought, maybe I should find out exactly where Farmington, Pennsylvania is. Because when I applied, I was like, Pennsylvania, I think it's somewhere in the middle of the United States, but my American geography isn't very good. So I Google mapped it, and I saw that Farmington, Pennsylvania is on the eastern side of the United States, and it's definitely a plane ride. And of course, I'm also afraid of flying. So by this time, I was totally panicking, but then I noticed that the state of Pennsylvania is right beside the state of New York, and I looked it up, and a train ride from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to New York City is only 8 hours. So I replied to the executive director, and I said, yes, I really would travel all this way to attend a 3-day workshop. And besides, I've always wanted to see New York City, so maybe I could combine the two. So I heard back from him right away. He responded and he said, okay, well, you win. Congratulations. The scholarship is yours. So at the end of May this past year, I traveled to Farmington, Pennsylvania to attend a 3-day craft workshop at Touchstone Center for Crafts. The workshop I did was imagery and metal workshop. Using pattern and images on metal is what I've been focusing on for the last number of years. I do a process of enameling and use a process of silk screening to get patterns onto the pieces with enamel. In the workshop, I got to learn a bunch of new techniques, including using ceramic decals, which I've been able to combine with my work ever since coming back. Touchstone Center for Crafts was amazing. It's like a summer camp for craft artists. At the same time that my imagery and metal workshop was going on, there was also a textile workshop and a ceramic workshop and a glass workshop and a blacksmithing workshop. And the most amazing experience for me happened in the blacksmithing studio in the evenings. So there was a resident blacksmith there from Estonia doing a 6-week residency, and in the evenings he took me into the blacksmithing shop and he taught me how to blacksmith. And I was, of course, so scared to do it because you're using tools on a way bigger scale than what you do in jewelry work. And you're moving metal when it is like red fire hot, but it was so much fun. And this last image of me is my favorite image that I have of myself. I'm using a power hammer, which is big and loud and scary and was so freaking cool. And I love this image because not only do I look like a total badass in it, but when I see it, it also reminds me that even when I'm scared to do things, I say yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Patsy, for saying yes. That was an excellent talk for someone who was terrified of doing a talk. So next up, we have a jerk with a camera. Really, he does go by that name. He's also known as Reilly Lievers. He is a multidisciplinary artist who might, given the particular day, call himself a photographer, a multimedia artist, a filmmaker, or a musician. Working with whatever material inspires him, Reilly can be found doing anything from creating functional photo-based artistic guitar cases to wandering the back alleys of the city taking photos with cameras that are much older than he is. Not wanting to be pegged into any single artist genre, he plays folk rock music when he is not recording multi-track numbers with collected soundscapes from the real world of coffee shops and public parks. Reilly and his lovely wife Miranda run their Blue Olive photography business out of their loft located on Gore Avenue in Railtown. This is Reilly's 4th year participating in the Eastside Culture Crawl. And please welcome Reilly.
Hello. I had a big plan for things I was going to do today, but I left it on my computer at home. So I'm just going to wing it. Yes, as Rachel just basically said, I didn't realize how much that bio really just says I'm all over the place. I do whatever strikes me at the moment is kind of the fun thing. So what I want to talk about today is photography. This is what I do most of the time. This is what I do for a living. My wife and I, we run the studio in Railtown. And I want to talk about wrecking photos, basically. This is the one thing that I love to do with photography, because in my day job I take pretty photos of people, and in my spare time I take pretty photos and then I break them somehow. So I do this in a lot of different ways. Some of the ways I do it is in film processing. I can take film and then either shoot it or develop it or both in ways that it's not supposed to be. But I want to actually, the one thing that I've been really doing a lot of this year is multiple exposures. So this is the process is basically where you take 2 photos over the same piece of film or the same digital image, and these are all done in camera on location as we go. So this is right behind our studio, actually. This is a photo that I did. So one of the things that I love doing is planning things in your head. Because I'm doing these in camera, I don't get a chance to see what it's going to be. It's not Photoshop where I get to maneuver things about until it looks really awesome. So what I'm doing is I'm actually like keeping track of stuff in my head. And if anybody knows me, I can't keep track of anything in my head. So it's kind of a really big challenge for me. So one of the fun things I like is the fact that I was able to remember that the cranes popped up into that corner of the frame and then keep it into the dark area so they would show up on the next, on the subsequent image. This winging it thing isn't working as well as I'd expected. Another thing that I do with my multiple exposures is I will keep a photo in the chamber, I guess you could call it. I will take a photo and I won't have anything immediately around me to take a secondary photo of. So I will wander around in circles, and I'm pretty sure I look like a crazy man wandering around alleys with a camera looking at things but not taking photos of anything. Because once I take the first photo, I have to take the second photo. But if there's nothing to look for, so this is one interesting. So I saw this graffiti, I'm like, this is brilliant. I don't know what to do with it, but I'm going to take the photo, and then I'm going to wander around. And then I tried to find the best view I could find of the city. And that's a sort of the way it goes that way. The thing I love about this is it's a very organic process. There's no pre-planning in the sense that I'm going to sit down today and I'm going to do this. It's very as it comes. And some days you get some really awesome stuff. Some days you get some really not awesome stuff. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. One of the other things that I do a lot of is street photography. So I spend a lot of time wandering around on the streets, taking photos of people in the environment, and I really like to explore our city the way it is now. Some of my favorite photos looking back at previous photographers or other artists really show what the city was like at the time. I mean, Fred Herzog's a really great example because you can still see some of the buildings, some of the city that was around in Fred Herzog's time, still in our time, especially in our neighborhood. You can see a lot of these buildings existing today. But one of the things I've been really trying this last little bit is to combine some of my other loves of street photography with multiple exposures. So that's something I've been playing a lot with this year. I'm going blasting through my slides. I'm not going to be done too soon. This is the thing that I've been experimenting. This is brand new for me. So this is a portrait session. So my day job is taking pictures of people, whether it be weddings, family portraits, things like that. And this is something that I've been really experimenting a lot with, of incorporating a photo session with a multiple exposure. It's really boring for the person who has the photo taken, because I take a photo of them and then I wander around like a crazy person looking for something really interesting, and they get to stand there twiddling their thumbs while I move around trying to find something to take a photo of. But the results have been fantastic. I'm super excited about this whole process, and this is something I've been really working forward to. Looking forward to doing more of and things that way. It is a really interesting situation because not only are you keeping track of the light and dark areas because they'll expose differently, you're also keeping track of what the person was looking like and things like that. And there can be 10-15 minutes of in between the two photos. This one, for example, was pretty close together, but I took a photo of my friend Caitlin and wandered around with her in back alleys and things like that. That's the other thing. I spend an exorbitant amount of time in a back alleys for a guy with a house. It's and it actually, going what was said earlier about the city being an organic structure, that is really what I believe too. The city is a really interesting thing because, especially when you get into back alleys, we have all of these. They're like organically created structures. Oh, good! I wasn't going as fast as I thought I was. Awesome. These organically created structures. So basically, you end up, especially in back alleys, things get painted over, things get put over top of things, wood gets put over top of things, and it gets graffitied and then painted over. And over time, over 20 years, you have this really interesting city and an area and structure that can only exist by happening at that process. So that's fun. Yeah. Yay, winging it.
So if you have questions for any of the artists, we are going to do a Q&A after everyone speaks. So I actually want to ask Reilly how he does digital double exposures, and maybe you do too.
I'm going to do a workshop on it. I'll tell you about it.
Okay, tell us afterwards. So next up, we have Claire Madill of Heyday Design. Claire loves finding shiny objects and arresting patterns in thrift shops. With a little mold-making magic, she creates functional and wearable modern porcelain that engage with ideas of value, nostalgia, and usefulness. Claire received her BFA from Emily Carr University of Art and Design in 2007 and began Heyday Design soon after. Claire has shown her porcelain jewelry in New York City with Design Boom at the International Contemporary Furniture Fair. Last summer, Claire attended CAMP, a business conference for creative entrepreneurs, and wrote a guest column in the Globe and Mail's small business section about her adventure. In 2012, she was featured in the Craft Community of Canada section of Toronto's one-of-a-kind show, nominated by Emily Carr University. An installation of 100 custom porcelain beaver jar lights was created in 2011 for Canoe Restaurant. Claire's 90-year-old Nan was pretty thrilled to know that her mother's jar was going to be enjoyed by so many people. This is Claire's 8th year participating in the Eastside Culture Crawl. Please welcome Claire.
Hi, my name is Claire, and I have a business called Heyday Design, modern porcelain with a vintage beat. And I was lucky enough to get my studio in the Murgatroyd building after graduating in 2007, and I launched my business in late 2008. And from the beginning, I've been challenging myself to take my work and my business to new places, and sometimes it's pretty scary, like this is sort of. But you just have to do it sometimes. So I make 2 lines of work, and I always have to do things twice. I don't know why. Maybe because I'm a Gemini or something, but because it would be just enough to make my line of cast porcelain objects, and it would be also just enough to make my line of porcelain jewelry, but I insist on doing both. So what I do is, where I really kind of launched my business was at the Toronto Outdoor Art Exhibition. And sort of every time I take my pieces a new place, I meet new people, and my work is then carried in different stores. And so as a result of doing that, I didn't really know. They don't really teach you a lot of business stuff at art school. So, I quickly had to make a line sheet for a store. But as a result of doing the Toronto Outdoor Art Exhibition, my work's been carried at Made, which is a design boutique of all Canadian-made design pieces in Toronto since then. And there's been spin-off effect ever since then. Like it was mentioned in my intro, I made a lighting installation for a restaurant, and Made is such a go-to place for people to find Canadian design that those people found me by owning some of my pieces that they'd found at Made. Other times, I have to jump in and figure out how to ship my pieces like all across the country. So I've made giant booth display and shipped ceramics like thousands of kilometers away and not lost any pieces in the mix. And also across borders and stuff, which is pretty. It can be kind of exciting to take pieces across the border and figure out how to do it that way. Right now, I am collaborating with some people in Toronto with the Harbourfront Centre, with a group called Creative Genius, and we're creating a line of tableware for retailers and boutiques to be carried across Canada. And also, they're also trying to take our work and promote it, because there's not so much of a collective effort being happening in Canada and the United States. This piece is my most non-functional piece, but it's a really, really fun piece. I have an example of it in the back. It has 3 ceramic balls in the spray can. I put an ad on Craigslist under creative gigs, I think, for a graffiti artist, and I got a call immediately because I really wanted, because I make molds and I don't want, I need the spray can to be completely empty so it doesn't explode, when you put the plaster on it, because the plaster gets really hot. So that was that was one of my fears when you pour the plaster and then you leave for the day. I just didn't want, disaster to happen. So, and he called me right away, and so it's really great that there's dents and stuff in the spray can. And most recently in my business, I went to camp in California, and in addition to taking courses on product photography, which is super, super important. I'm, slowly getting there. It's not enough to just make work. You have to be able to promote it and have a website and all that kind of stuff. You would have never, ever, ever convinced me that I would ever do that kind of thing. But I also did the high ropes and survived. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. So our next artist is David Robinson. David Robinson's striking sculptures incorporate a variety of materials ranging from traditional bronze, iron, steel, and silver to polymer, gypsum, cement, and hydrostone. While his work is primarily figurative, he often adds psychological and mythological twists to his subjects through the use of cables and strings, which both connect and disassociate his figures from their environment and further describe the inherent tension that exists between things. Robinson's work plays with dichotomies such as gravity and flight, religion and secularism, individuality and mass culture. Yet through his artistry, he is able to bridge these massive discordances into single poetic gestures. His work can be found in many high-profile collections across the country, and he has been commissioned to produce a multitude of large-scale public and private works. David has participated in the Culture Crawl since the beginning. Please welcome David Robinson.
Thanks, Rachel. It's great to be here with you all. My slides are backwards as well, which is just fine. And it's a good place to start. My career as an artist started I was as young as I could possibly be in digging up my mother's flower beds to get clay to make sculptures, and was quite obsessed about it from a very early age. And sometime that paired with an awareness of the kind of tradition of statuary, and specifically much to do with the kind of extinct mode of old, imperial artworks of monument, the language of monument and so forth. So this is a great place to start. It happens to be a piece that was first manifest as a smaller work. This is a monumental sort of over life-size version. First manifest in my first sort of professional show back in 1991. And of course it's kind of an unraveling of the heroic monument, the equestrian horse and rider. And in some ways it's an interesting place to start because also at art school I was told pretty forcibly that working with figure, working with representation, working in that idiom at all was, an extinct mode of expression, and it was not to be taken seriously. And I was, I kind of say that I started my career in a fit of arrogance, and now it's just obstinacy. But I didn't listen to anybody and just carried on with working with figures because that's what I thought was interesting and exciting. This piece also kind of evocative of the language of monument. Of course, this figure is cast in iron, I think, which is a piece we have here tonight. And the bronze plinth, and the plinth sort of figures pretty strongly. I don't just work with the figure, but really with its relationship to ground, with the kind of the language and grammar of how the figure presents in space, and specifically, I guess, referencing with these things public spaces. And so, of course, the plinth here, the grand heroic plinth, is reduced to a bronze casting of a cardboard box in this piece called Mass in Memory. But I love to play in the studio and get off the point and get off the topic and wander out into I guess something about having been modeling clay since a very young age is there's a sort of a development that one aspires to of a kind of a virtuosity in well, typically it tends towards sort of nth degrees of realism. And very often I like to kind of do things to set myself off balance, work with materials that talk back, that push back, that don't cooperate, that don't do what you want them to do as a master of your sort of vocation. So pieces like this, this is a piece that was cast in sterling silver, but it was modeled in kind of melting plastic picnic cutlery. And of course you see the ubiquitous Dixie cup here cast also into sterling silver. So that kind of transposing from very mundane materials and really working with the figure, with the material front and center as being it being a sort of tremendously important thing to watch and pay attention to what is happening, to the voice of the material, to the surface tension, to its inherent properties. And that's kind of, whether it's clay or plaster or goofy materials like this, that's kind of really central to my creed. This is just working in craft paper. I have a terrible story about these paper pieces, but I was talking with a lovely fellow who was at the time a poet laureate of the city of Vancouver. Our daughters were on the same soccer team. And I found out that he was a poet, and he found out that I was an artist, and he went and looked at my work, and he said, it's wonderful, how did you start working in these paper things? And I said, well, I had to produce a show, and I didn't have any money. So I said, paper was very cheap. And without thinking, I said, not as cheap as words. So his wife thought that was very funny. But that's not what I meant. This is a piece called Device and Desire. And so kind of the language, again, of the monument. These figures are high atop, they're lifted up, they're elevated in the language of monuments, but they are grappling, and the forces of gravity and that play upon them are kind of a pivotal changing of that motif. Thanks for your kind attention.
Thank you, David. David's work might actually be the largest work you can see in the Culture Crawl. So next up, we have Holly Cruz. What's going on back there? Holly Cruz has been blowing glass since 1995 and makes flame-worked and blown glass objects and jewelry. She began her career in the arts at the age of 19, working for Urban Glass, the New York experimental glass workshop in Brooklyn, New York. She then moved to New Orleans, where she worked in a production glass-blowing facility. Holly came to Vancouver in 1999 and began working for New Small and Sterling Studio Glass. During this time, she continued to pursue her careers as both a hot glass and flame-working glass artist, making work ranging from giant glass robots to tiny glass birds. Holly is a founding member and executive director of Terminal City Glass Co-op. This is Holly's 8th year participating in the Eastside Culture Crawl. Please welcome Holly.
So I was trying to think of a witty opening line, and I think we're going from Black Stallion to My Little Pony, because it's just completely different. And I'm probably not really actually going to talk about my work that much. And I'm going to go over time, because it's at least 6 minutes on here. But I'm last. I'm almost last. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the balance of my personal life, my home life, my work life, and my creative practice. So I'm going to try not to read right off the script, but there's a lot of material here. So when I wake up in the morning, I get to be human for about 10 seconds, and then my children crawl into bed, and I become a mother. And it's rough in the mornings. It's quick, it's fast. We do a lot of stuff really fast. We spend a few minutes wrestling with covers, we snuggle, we elbow each other in the face. We briefly feel the warmth and stillness of our love, and then we just hit the ground running. We make breakfast, we drink coffee, we find missing library books, we find glasses, we get dressed. My kids forget things about 5 or 6 times, and then we give a hug and a kiss, and I tell them to have a great day, and they slam the door, and then it's quiet for about a minute. And then they come back because they've forgotten something. And then I give them another hug and kiss, which I don't really mind. I have 2 small boys, 5 and 8. So I repeat that at 5:30 when I pick them up every day, and we go downhill to bedtime, just constant doing of things. But in the meantime, by 10 a.m., on most weekdays, I'm an administrator, teammate, manager, organizer, leader, and cat herder. So in my role as executive director of Terminal City Glass Co-op, I spend most of my days thinking about the development of our 120-member Glass Arts Co-op that I co-founded and helped to build in 2012. If you haven't been there, it's fun. We're right in the middle of the crawl. It's great. I program the classes, I design our marketing materials, I maintain our website, social media campaigns, plan fundraisers and events, write grants, answer phones, clean dishes. I attend a lot of meetings. Nonprofit life is just constant meetings. And I answer at least 100 emails every day. We're in our 3rd year as the first nonprofit public glass studio in BC. And it's really because we had this great small team of people who wanted to build a public access glass studio in Vancouver. And we have amazing volunteers, and our entire studio was built on volunteer labor. It's a cool place. So nonprofit life is pretty all-consuming, but when I have my free time, I make my own work. I originally studied to be a glassblower, and I worked as a glassblower for many years. And then I turned to flame working, which is just way easier. It's way less hot, it's way less risky, it's way more zen. You can focus on your work, and there's no communication with other people, which is, I really like that part of, I really like the communication part in hot glass, but it's work. You have to get to know your partner. And I had a partner in Vancouver for about 10 years, and oh well, things fall apart sometimes. So my work ranges from solid glass robots, which I have in the back, a big robot, and teeny tiny little cakes and cameras and cute little things. There are lots of things I love about making it. One, that I do it by myself, which is great. It's really introspective. I can think about my life or my things. These are etched with my illustrations, just in case anybody's wondering. I love the colors because I'm a total lover of rainbows. I'm not ashamed to admit it. A lot of my more recent work is like just color studies. It's addictive. I actually compare it to working with glass is like, or learning about glass, learning how to master it is like being a snake charmer. So like you have to be really patient and calm and quiet, and then you occasionally get bitten by a snake because you burn yourself or something like that. So while my time at the studio is limited, like I feel like I'm always designing or making something. I feel like every part of my life is an artist, even if it's like making stuff with my kids. So I feel like at home I'm actually making my children into these thoughtful humanist kids who hate overhead lighting and love good music. And at work I created this environment. I created a studio for people to enjoy. Every Halloween party or every Halloween costume and every birthday party is like an event, and it's got sketching and color swatches and consultations with the clients and all that kind of stuff. I volunteer at my kids' school. We plan events. We plan carnivals and multicultural nights and things like that. And I apply my artistic qualities to all of that in my life. I have a side business doing graphic design. I have a line of children's clothing. I draw, I doodle, I color. I make up really good bedtime songs on the fly that rhyme. I take lots of photos, and my Instagram feed is a hysterical explosion of glass, rainbows, pies, and kid art, and babies. The reason I'm telling you all this is because being an artist is everything I do. While I try to compartmentalize my life, it's just one big fucking mess. Lovely, fabulous mess. I switch roles so many times in a day, and finding that balance between family, work, and creative practice is very tough. But I am a firm believer in jam-packing your day, and my day is like one of those suitcases you have to sit on top of to get it to close. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Holly. I really want to hear one of these improvised lullaby bedtime songs. Maybe at the Q&A. So, unfortunately, our final speaker, Michelle Silver, was not able to make it this evening because she had a family crisis. But I still wanted to just quickly mention her work. She's a textile artist, and for me, when I was selecting the speakers, it was important to choose a variety of people that work in diverse mediums to really showcase the kind of stuff that you can see at the crawl. It's not just painting, it's not just drawing, it's so many different things. So I'm just going to go quickly through Michelle's slides because I can't do her artist talk, but I will read you the introduction of her work. Michelle Silvers is primarily self-taught, and her exposure to handwork began early. Both her mother and grandmother were seamstresses. In 1996, Michelle began working with the hand-hooked service and has since created and exhibited several bodies of work, including the current recovery method series. In recent years, her studio practice has expanded to include assemblage using screen print and stitch. Michelle teaches, lectures, and writes. Her work is in private collections across Canada and the United States. In 2015, Michelle will be the keynote speaker at the International Guild of Hand-Hooked Rug Makers Triennial Conference in Victoria. And this is Michelle's 5th year participating in the Eastside Culture Crawl. And this is some of her very beautiful hand-hooked rugs that you can see at her studio on Clark Drive. And she did actually provide me with an in-person piece that you can see in the back room. She does really gorgeous, colorful work with lots of texture. And a quick quote from Michelle: "Working with my hands is bred in the bone. Using textiles in my art making and their tactile qualities has a grounding effect on me. They bring me back to that place of possibility." So now we get to the Q&A part of the evening. So can we actually have the artists come up to the front? Or closer to the front? And Chris, do we need everybody to answer questions in the microphone?
If you want to hear them on the recording later, yeah.
Okay. So, Holly, can you actually hit the lights right behind you? On. There we go. Now we can see everybody. So, does anybody have any questions? I hope you do. You at the back.
Hey, jerk. Hey, what? How do you do double exposure?
Well, I can do them in multiple different ways. Some with a film camera, it's just you take a photo and then don't advance the film. Digital cameras in the last few years, though, have come out with this neat feature called multiple exposure, where it actually will allow you to take multiple exposures on the same digital file, which is new and exciting because then it's cheaper, mostly.
What's your split between digital and analog?
About 50-50. I pretty much shoot about 50-50 analog versus digital. And then across all mediums too. So if I do street photography, I do it with film or digital. It's really just whatever camera I pick up as I walk out the door. I have a lot of cameras. So, yeah.
More questions? Come on. It's awesome stuff.
For artists that are also in the crawl, will you be there, like, say, during the day or Friday during the day?
I'll be frantically putting everything together Thursday during the day. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I forgot to mention, this year the Culture Crawl is 4 days instead of 3, and that's a big undertaking for us. So It's going to be Thursday and Friday evening, 5 to 10, and Saturday, 11 to 6. And then we're all going to fall down afterwards because it's fun to do the culture crawl, but it's a lot of work and it will be exhausting. So,
Saturday and Sunday.
yep, Saturday and Sunday, 11 to 6, as well as the Thursday and Friday evenings. So, more questions? Really? Nobody has questions?
Come on, make something up. I'm trying to think of the Bumblebee song. But
Oh, yeah, can you? Okay, Holly, can you sing a song?
not a chance.
Now it's artist karaoke.
I thought I had a question for the audience.
Sure.
Raise your hand if you're in the culture crawl. That's pretty good. That's like
That's
a quarter of the audience.
It's pretty awesome.
John, what's the point of the W?
What's the point of it?
Yeah, what is this one of your drawings?
Yes. She's holding up a pin for anyone that can't see, or a magnet rather, that I've printed an image. The first of the urban landscape pieces that I did was the Woodwards. So that was a little earlier before I've gotten into the alleyway environment pieces that I've been showing tonight. And that was when I was really looking at city monuments, just sort of, popular signs and things that people really recognize, and buildings, parking meters, bicycles chained to any kind of street post. And that was previous to when I actually started studying the environments. That's when I was studying various components that might be found within environments. So it kind of evolved into the space versus the object. So, and it's pretty cool.
That it is.
Have you ever done any, I don't want to use the word comic, but I think it's illustrated novels now or something, but have you ever done anything like that?
No, I haven't. I'm sure now that question is raised because I think the look of my work has a fairly graphic look to it. Graphic in the sense of graphic novel and illustration. Yeah, and I think that's due to the in part due to the heavy black outlines that I use, because I draw with a permanent ink marker before I do my acrylic layers on top. And I think it just gives it that really harsh color separation, bordered by a black outline.
And for Patsy, is that your enameling, is that glass enamel on metal?
Yeah.
So you do that as a film?
I do a bit of work out of a kiln and also with a torch. So when I'm enameling on copper, I'll do multiple layers and fire it in the kiln. And I also enamel directly on sterling silver, and I just do one layer and I torch fire it.
And with the stencils, the same process?
With the stencils, I've only done it on the copper, and it's they're decals, like ceramic transfer decals, and it's done on the last firing in the kiln.
So that's on top, that's the last one.
Right.
And is that, do you design those? Like, how do you design them?
The decals I haven't designed. So when I do the silk screening, I've used some vintage patterns and then some of my own drawings. The decals, it's just been in the last 6 months that I've started experimenting with them. So right now I just have some vintage ceramic decals that I've been using, but I did learn that I can also print my own.
One more question, David. You studied where?
I studied at the Ontario College of Art, but I started in Vancouver at Langara. Long live the studio programs.
Can you talk a little bit about, because I've been in your studio before, and you have I guess you start your work with these small maquettes and then make these incredibly large pieces. So could you talk a little bit about the process of that? Moving from this small thing to this large thing?
Yeah, the image that I showed you was an interesting example of that. That happened over a span of something like 15 years. The first piece, as I said, had been done some years back. And very often, a lot of the works, because of some of that sensibilities that I spoke about, they kind of are these diminutive scale things which use kind of architectural and design devices to kind of invoke the idea of the monument in that language. And so in the case of the equestrian, you know, there was an opportunity to take it up to a larger scale. We synthesized a little bit of a digital process in doing the basic enlargement to get the basic volumes done, to answer that as a technical question. But in terms of the aesthetics of it, it was a curious sort of undertaking, because the small maquette had, as I say, kind of envisioned the idea of the monument. To take that actually to a monumental scale was to have it, the whole piece, transposed kind of utterly. So, you know, in the sculptor's art, that relationship of our bodies to these things that we walk up to and have these visceral encounters with is a magical kind of shifting dynamic in the work.
Robin, does the work at the it's at the gardens, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Does it just decay, or do you actually?
No, I'm
go and
taking
take
it
away?
down Monday. So there's,
Exactly.
yeah, Monday, I think. Oh, sorry. Monday, it's coming down. Probably. Yes, and then
That'd be fantastic if they just
decayed. Yeah. There was a wonderful spider's web on it, which I tried to photograph, but I couldn't get. It's quite high. The ladder I had to use was quite high. I actually did have vandalism problems initially, so I had to move it further up. And there's 2 pieces, so if you have time, they will be there this weekend. And there's 2 other artists as well, and you can go into the website Artistland. I have some cards and see the other artists' work as well. And then the next, there's another group of 3 artists, and then a final group of 3 artists. Yeah.
How are those pods all held together?
Thread.
Thread.
I sewed them. My studio was a mess. There was seeds all over the place all summer.
Do you have to drill them, or can you just pierce
No, you can. They're quite. I should have brought one. They're quite light, so I just had a big, like a darning needle, and was able to poke through. Yeah.
So Claire, for the sort of work that you do, like you cast the more functional object pieces like but can you talk about the jewelry that you make and how you make them?
Sure. I find a lot of my patterns for jewelry on a lot of vintage glass dishes. So if you look on the bottoms of things, often you'll find something really interesting. And so I'll make a mold of a pattern I find, and then sometimes when I look at that mold, it's the negative of the pattern. That's kind of the cool part. And so sometimes I'll make a mold of the mold. And it used to really hurt my head to sometimes like think about all that and sort of make drawings of it. And anyways, and then I'll press my clay into that, and then cut each piece out. Sometimes there's so much to choose from that I'll make sort of one of everything, and then decide what really works or what I'm really drawn to, what I want to wear, and that's what I go with. I'm wearing all black right now, so I make my porcelain. I make white porcelain jewelry, as well as I stain my clay black, so I don't have to glaze the whole surface, and I'll just do little details that will catch the light in asymmetrical ways. Oh, thanks, it's brand new.
Can people buy it from you during the culture crawl?
Yes, they can.
And Holly, can you talk a little bit more about flame working? Describe what that is.
Sure. So, flame working, we have oxygen, natural gas torches, and you sit at a table and you don't have to talk to anybody. And and so I love talking to people. She's right, I do. Actually, I put my headphones on, but we've decided that my headphones are not obvious enough because people don't see them. So I have to get like really big headphones to put them on, because people ask me work questions, because I do my own work at work. So I share a studio with 120 people. Sorry, that's tangential. So flame working, we have like 8 torches at this big table, and you sit down and you take pretty glass rods and you melt them in the flame, and then you manipulate them and make them into what you want. And you kind of have to keep it hot the whole time, and then we stick it in a kiln. It cools overnight because glass has to cool down slowly. And then the next day, clean it and finish it. A lot of my newer pieces are actually cold work too. So they're belt sanded or flat ground, and that's a whole other process. And then they're done. No, the octopus is, so I use like a photoresist process with that. So I draw the pictures into my computer, and then I have them printed on photoresist. I don't know if anybody knows what that is, but it's like a photocopy of, it's kind of like a decal. Sorry, I'll translate that into Canadian. Decal. So now I'm going to talk for another 5 minutes or so. So it's like you put it's like a sticker, and you put it on, and then you sandblast it, or I sandblast it, and then it eats away. It only sandblasts the part where my design is, and then you peel off the rest, or you soak off the rest, and then so it's sandblasted, and then I enamel it with like just like heavy duty sign paint that lasts forever. Yeah, it's a process.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about, and also you talked about your art not selling and jewelry. Can you maybe
Well,
those two things?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I do. I figure I make art jewelry, but I do make a wearable line of jewelry that sells in stores and galleries. And then I make big one-of-a-kind pieces that are my favorite things to make, but they're intended to be in exhibitions, and they don't sell. So, but I love doing them, and I love the art, and I love the one-of-a-kind aspect of it. And often, if I do a one-of-a-kind piece, it will kind of translate into kind of smaller pieces that end up being a more wearable line. I do see the jewelry that I make that sells as art as well. But it's just, it does also get a bit into production for me. I am making some of the same pieces over and over again, so it becomes a little bit less of an art process for me for doing those pieces.
Are the one-of-a-kind pieces wearable?
The one-of-a-kind pieces are wearable for sure. So if someone wants to be very bold as well. You don't see them being worn very often in Vancouver, so yeah. Very similar processes. So I do work mainly with enameling. One of the really big pieces that was shown that had the big orange medallion, that was an enamel piece. So that actually was a piece that I did collaboratively with 2 other jewelry artists. So I did all the enameling parts on it. One of them does filigree work, Sue Foster, who's in the Murgatroyd building, and then Simone Richmond does etching, and she's in the Onion building where I am as well. So we all were using the same techniques we use in our own work, but then combining them to make a bigger piece.
I have another question for David too. I mean, you spoke a little bit about the piece being small versus big, but what did that feel like? Like, did you envision the piece being monumental in size when you made the small maquette, or not? And what did it feel like to actually see it manifest in this huge scale?
Yeah, well, that kind of magical shift that happens that I alluded to. So encountering, I mean, I've had a lot of years to kind of look at that piece and think about it, because when these things manifest in the studio, you don't always know what you're doing, and you're in the room when it happened, but you can't provide too much more sort of as a material witness. So I had some time to think about it kind of conceptually. And in that light, I mean, I think what happened with that particular piece was, as I said, that kind of that's the smaller scale version was sort of it was an idea. It was the idea of the monument, and so taking it up to that full scale and seeing it actually, physically dwarf people standing around the thing. It was effective in one sense. It was completely alien as an object in this city. We installed it for a year or so down in Yaletown. And so, because the language, as I've mentioned, that sort of idiom you don't see. It's not part of our city. It's never been part of our cityscape, particularly. The kind of formality of it and some of its assumptions and some of what it unravels, it was, it all takes place. Its frame of reference is, 200 years old and 3,000 miles away kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, so I guess to answer the question more concisely, I've seen the smaller works kind of move behind people's, move into people's minds and occupy them as monuments, even more, perhaps more effectively than this big bloody object that was cast in bronze at tremendous production values. And so it's an interesting thing to explore, but I think there's a lot, I think there's buckets of art out there that is powerful little pieces, and someone says, well, what if we make it big? And that's not a formula for a success as often as not, I think.
David, I've been in your wonderful workshop, and I know that you do have really big pieces in there. Do you always make all your pieces? Or, like, I know a lot of artists, like Douglas Copeland, he'll send it to Heavy Industries in Calgary, and they create the pieces.
Yeah, you're touching a nerve there on purpose, aren't you, Val?
Just checking.
See, did I twitch? Yeah, I thank you so much for that question. I was speaking with a very successful public art consultant who shall remain nameless, and was chatting, and I realized we were chatting for a while, and my assumption all along was, well, this is what I do, this is my work, and I will be, fabricating this thing and installing it and so forth. And, so there was a bit of friction about that, because very often consultants do get involved in a lot of the production side and liaising with their clients and so forth. And there's lots of room for that. But, I'm an old school studio artist. My heroes were, these old tweed jacket wearing characters like Giacometti and Manzù and Marini. So the studio and the fact that things happen there and that ideas evolve there under the influence of matter, all of that stuff matters deeply to me. But anyway, she said to me, well, we realized what our difference of assumptions was when she said, there's not a lot of people actually make their own art anymore, David. Like, that's it. And so, and I think that, yeah. So I'm offended by lots and lots that goes out there. That are the whim of an artist who has, whose stars have aligned in a particular way, that their whims can be manifest writ large. It leaves. You can't make me care about that work.
You're among friends.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, the first step is admitting you have a problem.
Claire, is it Claire? Yeah. You mentioned that when you went to school, they didn't include a lot of business acumen in the program, and you had to sort of learn that. And I'm curious, sort of like from you or anyone else on the panel, as someone who's not in this industry, I'm curious about how you balance the business and marketing side with the creative time. And Holly, you said you love your solitude, and how do you get your art out there and be sustainable as a business?
It's so hard because I would spend 100% of my time just making things all the time, and that is what I'm so happy when that's what I'm doing. I'm still really struggling. Like, I know what I need to do. Well, I know what I need to do in terms of, social marketing and social media and stuff, but it's actually doing it is the hardest things. Yeah, and it's so much extra work. I'm almost nostalgic for a time when people didn't have to have websites as well as, so anyways, I know that it's really beneficial in so many ways. So, yeah, it's a constant struggle, and
ratio of time you spend, creative versus business?
Oh, I still spend, probably 90% of my time doing, I'm on top of my business stuff, but I'm not super proactive all the time. And I was speaking with Holly recently about promoting work and things, and she said she's great at promoting work, but she's you're most comfortable promoting other people's work.
I'm way more comfortable promoting other people's work. And I was going to say that I've seen what Claire does. We are in the same building, and I've known you for like 7 or 8 years now, probably. It's hustle. Like, she hustles. Like, she has to do show after show after, like, you can't ever stop. And you're actually really good at it, I think, compared to most people, because most artists, they want to make their own work, and either your work suffers. It's kind of like you can't have both. I feel like a lot of artists don't get to have both unless you have somebody representing you, which is great. And in my job, my day job, like, I help artists I promote them through our business, and it's my job. But ask me to do that with my own work, and I'm like, whatever, I only have 2 galleries. She's got like, I don't know how many. Like 100.
Well, no, they're not galleries though.
Yeah.
They're retail stores and boutiques and stuff. But you know what? I really luck out a lot because my work, because I've taken it to Toronto so many times. A lot of people think I live there, which is I get to live here, but people think that I'm there. So that's really good. But I've lucked out a lot with. When I show up in places, there's always spin-off effect from that, and so I'll always get a few, some press or there's always some spin-off effects. So I'm always benefiting from that because, like, if it was just up to me, I'd probably be like kind of nowhere because I just want to be making those stuff.
I would imagine you all have to do marketing of some sort.
Yeah, it's hard.
Well, Chris Terrell, he used to write for the Opus magazine. I've been to a few of his workshops, and he says artists now, it's at least 50% of your time. Yeah, which really sucks.
And you have to do everything too. Like, you have to be you have to do all your social media, and you have to, unless you've worked hard enough to be able to afford to pay somebody to do it for you, and I haven't worked that hard.
Anybody else want to say anything about that?
Well, I've lucked out. I have my wife. I'd be a very successful sandwich artist if it wasn't for my lovely wife, who's the marketing side of things. I take pretty pictures, and she makes people pay me for it. So that works. That's helpful. Yeah.
I need a wife.
You can't have mine.
Although you would make a lovely couple. So, one last question. Anybody got one last question?
Well, to follow up on that, David, you have people who work for you, right?
Yes.
So, do they do people for you? So you can just be in the studio?
Present here this evening is my gallery manager, Susan Durasp, without whom I wouldn't be standing here. I could be making sandwiches with Reilly. And then some amazing people have come along over the years and helped me out. Lots of help. The studio is very, as I kind of alluded to, very production heavy. And as for marketing, I do have some sort of representing dealers that they show and occasionally sell the work. And then events like the Culture Crawl are very useful. It's always very healthy for artists to have a deadline, a target on the calendar to work to paint the walls, finish some things, take seriously in your own mind and conception of what you're doing the fact that, well, how's it going to look through someone else's eyes? And it's not crucial, but it's a useful dynamic for getting you to move and act. Have I answered the question yet? Yeah.
So, if you would mind passing that to Robin. One last thing before we wrap up. Tell everybody where your studio is and what other artists you would visit if you weren't actually doing the Culture Crawl. And if you remember where they are. No pressure.
Can someone else start? Let me think.
Start with Reilly.
Yeah, let's start with
I was like,
Sorry.
thanks. Our studio is at the very north end of Gore Avenue. So we are in the Edge building, which is right across the street from the Railtown Studios. We have our own entrance, though, so we are at 25 Gore. If you've hit the tracks, you're there, basically. We have the luxury, though, of the artists that I would like to see, we actually see after the crawl. So a bunch of a crawl people get together, and Rachel and Sue put it together often, and we'll get to go around and see all other people's places on Monday or Tuesday, which is really nice because being part of the crawl, you never get to see a lot of things. But I really want to see Octopus Studios. Every time somebody comes to my space, they've come after coming to Octopus Studios, and they're always telling me these great tales of great, awesome artists there. So I'm going to cheat out and say that.
Okay, my studio is in the amazing Murgatroyd building, and I get to go to work every day. Oh, so I'm Studio 202, the top of the stairs at 975 Vernon. Yeah, I just get to look out and sort of see whose car or bike is there, and get to sort of go down the hall or, see some stuff. But I don't get anywhere else, so I would just love to go everywhere and anywhere on the crawl, because now that I've been on the crawl for 8 years, I haven't been on the crawl for 8 years or 7 years, I'm not sure.
I'm at Terminal City Glass Club. We're in the middle of the Culture Crawl at 1191 Parker Street, also in the Murgatroyd building, but on the other side, across from Parker Street Studios. And we'll have glass blowing demonstrations all weekend. And 11 artists in our studio. If I were to be able to go elsewhere, and I would probably try and sneak this in at some point, I would definitely go to see Bridget Catchpole in Parker Street Studios and buy myself something beautiful. And does everybody know Ray Oppoff? I would go to Ray's studio because he's a great guy and I love his work.
I'm also in the Murgatroyd building, so I'm not going to recommend that just because everyone else is going to recommend it as well. So I'm going to also say Octopus Studios just because I'm biased and that was my last studio. But I'm also going to recommend the Hamilton Bank building because two of my friends, Lori is in there and in the audience, and also Amanda, and it's a really wonderful place.
I'm in the Onion Studio building, which is on 1103 Union Street. We're behind the giant pink ice cream place. And I would, I have a fantasy about living and working in Valerie's studio space. So I would go there. They have an amazing space that they live, I think, on the top, and their studios are on the bottom. And yeah, you're lucky that I can't go in the studio or on the crawl to see your studio, because I probably would never leave. So.
My studio is at Parker Street, 1000 Parker. The space that we open is my gallery, which is at Suite 440. And I don't even know, I should know, but I've had my head down working if my old friend Meryl Gerber is got an open studio, but she's right across the hall from Robin. So I will now call her tonight and tell her to open her door. Yeah, and I don't know if Danielle Swift is going to have her space open, but also a very talented young artist.
I'm at Parker Street as well, 352 down the little hall, and I would say go into the website because it's a wonderful tool and look at people's work because there's so much fabulous work, and Parker Street gets far too many people. It gets too crowded, and there's lots of small venues to go and look, and they just don't always, people pick Parker Street, not to say, I shouldn't say, but I think it really look around and see what work, and the way the website's set up now, you really can go in and look at specifically Rachel's work or because everyone has quite different tastes, and it's nice to have the chance to browse ahead of time and then sort of plan your route from where you want to go. And sometimes I have intermittently not opened so that I could go around, and I've planned a little path and saw studios that I didn't see by just picking one that you want to go and then go in that area. So that's what I would do. And Sheila, actually, she might be at Railway. Shirley Wiebe.
Oh, yeah.
Is she in your studio? Is that your, or she's at?
39, I think.
Yeah,
Okay,
she's down
that,
there.
yeah, that
There's
would
a
be
nice
my.
pocket of artists in our area.
Yeah, yeah.
All
So,
opening up Railway Street, and in our building
Yeah.
is actually opening up a courtyard area.
oh, great.
this year.
Yeah.
So
So,
we have, I think 3 or 4 artists.
look
that are
around.
in the main area there too.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. That was fantastic. So please give everyone a round of applause.